Bonjour everyone, I am Anne-Lise Cailliez and welcome to Parlez-Vous CEO, where we ditch the corporate talk and get real about entrepreneurship. Each week, I chat with founders and CEOs who build businesses their way, through the failures, pivots, and breakthroughs. And they bring the fire. Plus, I'll drop some golden nuggets of wisdom from my own entrepreneurial journey. This is your space to grow, learn, and evolve with a true growth mindset. Remember, success isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. Now let's kick things off and get this party started. Hello, bonjour, hello. Welcome to another episode of Parlez-Vous CEO. My name is Anne-Lise Cailliez and I am your host, and I'm super excited to have with me Henry Abenaim. So Henry started his career working alongside an alternative lending company where he was tasked with implementing Salesforce as their CRM. And he quickly realized that the platform could do more than just manage contacts. So it could run an entire lending program. And that insight led him to found CloudMyBiz, a Salesforce consulting firm, and then Fundingo, a loan management solution built for alternative lenders. So founded in 2013, Fundingo helps lenders originate, underwrite, and service loan faster with fewer errors and less risk. Henry, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. In your own words, could you introduce yourself and a bit about your background with our listeners?
Yes, yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. And just on my background, as you said, I come from the lending industry. It was my first job out of college. Lending startup here in Los Angeles. Fun, exciting, fast growing, and then saw the pain points in lending back in 2007, where we were repurposing tools from the mortgage industry and using spreadsheets, really a whole slew of pieces together, piecemeal to run the business. And one day I actually fat fingered an extra zero on a wire transfer, and 10 times the amount went out to a borrower, a bait and fishing shop in Montana, and we never saw the money back. I thought I'd get fired, but realized, something has to change. And what we did is from there, we implemented Salesforce shortly after to start tracking and managing and having a proper CRM, which led into a operating system. When I was at different trade shows, other lenders saw what we had because we'd show them our dashboards and they were like, we've been looking for that for so long. So it gave me the realization that everyone's really suffering from the same pain and the same challenges. It's not a company problem, it's an industry problem. And we were in the regular residential mortgage space. This is the alternative lending that was growing tremendously at the time. So in 2013, I started CloudMyBiz as a consulting firm to really deliver on that demand. And we helped over 100 fintech lenders implement their digital experience. And from there, Fundingo, the product, was born after realizing that the market really needed a fit-for-purpose tool to manage credit and risk more efficiently. And it was more effective to build a tool that solves the problem for a group of lenders versus building it custom for each lender. And we turned it into a software product and software as a service. Today, we're about 180 customers and growing, and really passionate to solve the problem for the industry that I solve for myself.
Amazing. And Henry, can you go back to when you started the business? Did you have co-founders? Did you raise funds? How did you go about it?
Very simple. No co-founders, didn't raise any funds. And here's why. We were doing consulting. So we were able to get business. We were building on the Salesforce platform. So we actually got leads from Salesforce. They were looking for consulting firms like us, and we would just bill in advance of the projects, and we used those funds to grow the business. So there was no co-founder, there was no, outside funds. It was really just more like starting organically, and then from operations revenue we grew as we needed to fulfill the projects. And as we continued to get word of mouth and demand, we just kept growing the business till we had 20, 30 employees and grew from there. Really, I guess we were lucky in that demand wasn't an issue. We never really had to invest in a whole lot of marketing to generate demand.
And so, Henry, you're running multiple companies. And can you share a bit about that and what the companies are and how you divide your time, and also how your team is holding that together?
Yes. So today, Fundingo is the company. The consulting has been folded into Fundingo. Fundingo, the way you look at it is it's the product that was born from the consulting engagement. So we actually, one feeds off of the other, and it's all under one roof. Our goal at the top is we're providing the infrastructure for lending companies to manage their complex lending in a very simplified source system of record, and they all complement each other. So it's not like, are we going to focus on one versus the other? Our niche is that we're able to provide the clients with the right professional services alongside with the software, because it's one thing to buy software. It's another thing for that software to really drive value. So software without the proper professional services, it dilutes the value. So they're really complementing each other.
Absolutely, that works hand in hand. And so for a founder, how is it to run a business doing consulting versus a software company? What have you found were the main differences and maybe the most challenges you faced?
Yes. So first of all, let me say that originally we started as consulting. The next step was we did both consulting and product. Today we're product only. We do not take more. We made a shift recently. We do not do any more consulting on its own. We only consult for around our product engagements. But what I could tell you is I saw all those steps, and it was very interesting because the consulting is all about billing for your time and charging an hourly rate. The challenge there is balancing pipeline with the supply, and that's very, very difficult to be profitable. There's obviously ways to do it, but your main KPI is what's your billable percentage, your how much are you billing of the time? What is your profit on your hourly work? While product is a very different KPI. You're not going to be profitable when you're going to win those initial clients. In fact, you'll very often have to be at a loss the first few months or the first year sometimes till you make the revenue later that is profitable. So it's growth, it's recurring revenue, enterprise value. Those are very different metrics and different drivers. And that's why we shifted to being focused on software as a service, as a product, because you can't really run one company successfully at a smaller scale like we are with two very different KPIs. They clash with each other.
Right. And so coming from the consulting side and going to the SaaS space, what have you found have been the most efficient marketing tools, or what are you thinking about in terms of marketing? Because you also mentioned that you didn't need to do marketing before.
Yeah, that's a great point. So part of the reason why we didn't do marketing before too is we didn't understand our ideal customer profile well. And we were getting enough demand organically that we were busy and we were learning as we were busy. Now we feel we understand that a lot better. And we're starting different marketing motions that we haven't done before. And what I find for inbound, we're working with different AI tools to generate search engine optimization and optimization on generative AI tools like ChatGPT. 2 years ago, I never imagined it, but I can't tell you how many times we speak to customers and say, how did you find us? And they ask ChatGPT, what's a good alternative to this and this software that I have today? Or what's a good option for my industry? And Fundingo showed up. So we're definitely showing up there. We're doing more around that. And moving forward, we're doing a lot of outbound. So we have different motions starting in place, and everything from LinkedIn primarily to AI SDRs and things like that.
And so Fundingo is built on Salesforce, and that was a specific bet. How has that shaped who you're selling to? And has that ever gotten in the way of growing the business? Great question.
So first of all, I solved the problem originally with Salesforce. So I have a bias there. But I realized the power of a platform that gives you a layup that you only really need to focus on a certain layer versus the entire infrastructure. And Salesforce provided that. So it made sense from the beginning to do it on Salesforce. And as we're getting more and more clear on our ideal customer profile, what's crystallized, which I find is interesting, is our ideal customer is the one that appreciates a platform, not just a tool. And customers that are interested or are on the Salesforce platform typically are one of those customers. So it's a really good match. And finally, as we work with smaller or larger companies, the enterprise trust layer of Salesforce carries a lot of weight for the customer. So it's the right place for us. It's allowing us to provide better value. 1 meter of value that we provide comes with a 10x multiple because you're on a platform that delivers the trust layer, the security layer, the workflow layer, the portal layer. There's so much that comes with it that we could deliver 1 meter of value, and 10 is what the customer actually experiences. So we really love that. And that's why we're sticking to the Salesforce platform.
And Henry, what excites you the most about your business?
First of all, I love what I do. I think the team that we have, the fact that they love what they do, and they also a lot of them come from the lending industry, makes us all row the boat in the same way and celebrate the wins and are huddled together with the challenges. I think the most exciting thing is that every day you're solving new problems, which some people could see that as challenging, and it is challenging. But there's never a moment where you're not faced with a new problem to solve, and your motion of solving problems becomes a repeatable motion, and it's what you expect, and you keep doing it, and it's very, exciting and challenging because you see you're plowing the way forward. And then when customers give you feedback, like some of our customers that I'll share here today, when we get to that, it's just so rewarding to know that we're making an impact. And I think on a more macro level, we're looking to find ways to scale what we're doing on a larger level to become the household name in the space. That is, all that together is very exciting to me.
You said your team came mostly from the lending space. Were they in tech lending or were they on the sales side? What's the profile of the people you're looking to hire?
When we hire on the sales side, we look for more sales, but typically they're not they're more in the business side, not so much the tech side. We do have some that were on the tech side. In fact, we had some employees of our customers that once later on they came to Fundingo and said, hey, I know your software, I would love to join your team. So they already had the experience with Fundingo. But yeah, typically it's more they understand the business and had an overlap in the technology, maybe as a business analyst or a management position, things like that.
And when hiring, what are the traits that you're looking for? What are the traits of personality you're after?
Grit. Someone that is going to push through. Someone that has the motivation to not stop at the first roadblock. I think that's the strongest character trait that really propels forward, especially in today's environment.
And how are you able to identify that in an interview?
So, one thing is you obviously the gut feeling, you speak to someone, you see how they're interacting. But one tip that I got that I think is really powerful is we have them role play or do a certain exercise. And then you give them feedback on something that they could do a bit differently. And then you say, hey, now let's do it differently and see how they adopt. Someone that has the energy, the interest, the grit, they're going to be excited to adopt and change, while someone that is not really coachable will not. That's worked for us.
That's a good test. That's a good test, seeing how people respond to it and how quickly they can adapt to feedback.
Exactly.
And Henry, your family came to Canada as immigrants. How much of that background is still driving you 13 years into building this?
A lot, because there are days where it's just crazy and it's so, impossible sometimes it feels. But to be just some background, my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. They came to Montreal with nothing and, small paying jobs just to get by, and were immigrants in a new country. The idea of survival, the fact that they survived that, and their family were murdered during the Holocaust, and they were just able to stay every day and build with a smile and rebuild a family and be able to survive. That survival power is in me. I think the other thing too is always my grandmother whispering in my ear of America is the place of opportunity, and you can make something big happen. And the idea of going from the generation that just survived to making something thrive and legacy is big, very big in me. So not just that is a driver for sure every day, that we're sitting on the shoulders of survivors. And then same thing with my father's side, coming from Morocco, very poor background in Morocco lifestyle, and coming to Montreal and getting by as immigrants, but not feeling like you're in the driver's seat, so to speak, in the Canadian culture, and being able to now be here and build a business that impacts customers, has a team that relies on the business and grows the business together, has a brand that's growing, and to me that's very personal and exciting, and it's obviously creating a legacy, not just a business.
And you touched on a little bit earlier that sometimes things feel impossible. So what are your mechanism and your methodology when shit hit the fan?
Yeah. Wow. So first of all, one thing I turned to a client that became a good friend. One of my first clients actually was a client of mine when towards the end of being at the lending company and when I started the consulting firm. He said you could find consultants for various different disciplines. So over time, today you probably find that out very quickly. But back then it was like a phone conversation that gave me that tip. And you find a fractional CFO, you find a fractional COO, you find someone who's really good at marketing, but you speak to them once a month. Having a sounding board of smart people around you that focus in a certain discipline, you always feel like you're looking, you're able to speak to someone who's able to look at the rear view mirror while you're looking out the windshield. That's been tremendous, right? So surrounding myself with people that have done that before, that area before, and knowing that we could always talk through it, not in it alone, has been huge. Obviously, family is huge, but I think it's the survival mentality. I don't think I've ever never expected anything in life to be simple and easy. So if it's going to be tough, it's going to be impossible, I have to remind myself that is the course. That's where growth happens, right? So I think surrounding with people, but also having the right mindset when it's so impossible to just push forward and know that this is par for the course, that makes it happen.
Do you think that there can be some a mindset that comes with surviving? Like, when do you decide that you're not in surviving mode anymore and that you're in growth mode or cruising mode or thriving mode? Like, and how do you still find the motivation?
That's a great question, great point, because I'll tell you my former employer told me something that's very, very powerful, right? A person's biggest strength is their biggest weakness, and their biggest weakness is their biggest strength very often. And the survival mode has a trade-off. A lot of people in my shoes would not have tolerated years of survival because they don't have the bone for it. They would push for thriving faster and maybe would be, it does, one of the things that is hard to think about is companies that started 2 years ago that are multi-billion-dollar companies today, right? Or companies that started 5 years ago and are multi-million-dollar companies. And here we are on this journey that is taking time, slow and steady, so to speak, right? So I think the idea that I have tolerance for survival is a strength, but also has its weakness. So we do need to constantly, and I do, I reshape my mindset with the consultants around me, with reminders as the industry grows, that we do need to optimize for scale and growth. And there are sometimes higher risk decisions that need to be made, even though it puts more at risk. And I think over time, like going to the gym, you work on the muscle and the muscle gets stronger. I think that's where we are right now. I believe that we've really pivoted to product just after COVID and been able to grow it tremendously in the last few years and have now an opportunity to say, but what we've grown, when I say tremendous, it's relative growth. Now it's time for scale. We've piloted it. We have the early traction. We understand the customer, what problem we're truly solving, where we're unique in the industry. And that, when you have that clear, then you could start the engines, right? And I think that's where we're at right now.
Do you ever feel that being a solo founder can be lonely? Like the concept of lonely at the top?
I read that a lot and I read that a lot. I personally have not found it that way. And maybe because the staff that I work with and the consultants that I work with typically will treat the business like it's their own. And that's one thing that I care, that the people that join me and that are on the team, they care for the business like it's their own. And I feel like I have tons of founders around me. That's how I feel. And we're also very close to the businesses. And most of the businesses we work with, we're working with founders and other executives. So I think that notion, sure. I've never really run a business with a co-founder from startup to scale. But I've not found that to be a big part of my journey.
So I guess if you surround yourself with the right team, it doesn't necessarily have to feel lonely at the top, especially if you find members that really treat the business as their own. But how do you find that when you're hiring? How do you vet that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when you're hiring and you don't have the ability to pay the best competitive market rate, you're hiring the rocks, the stones that show a little bit of mud, or not the most experience in that particular area, but you are believing in the person. Mm-hmm. I think when you do that, you have a person that then believes in you in the company. That's one big thing.
Henry, what is a scaling challenge that you've had with Fundingo that you really didn't anticipate, and how did you solve it?
Oh, that's a great question. We're having one right now, which is we solve for complex lending use cases. What we found is private lenders that have a very simple loan product and they can take any any system off the shelf and be okay with it. When there's more complex loan programs and terms and structures, that's where Fundingo as a platform where it's very flexible and configurable plays very nicely. And that complexity is usually not very scalable. So what we're working on is finding ways for the complexity to see the patterns in the complexity, which we are seeing it, and being able to build a repeatable way of solving that complexity over time. And that will allow us to scale within a complex lending environment. So that's been one big area that we've already made some smaller strides on that, but we're looking forward to making much bigger strides.
And you talked about a platform that would have a standard core and customizable add-on on top. So is that the direction for the company?
Yes. So what we find a lot is lending companies that we speak to that are not on Fundingo, they will describe their current system as something that covers 80-90% of their workflow and their structure. And then the other 10% is being done, or 10-20% is being done on spreadsheets or other methods. And what ends up happening is they feel a lot of pain downstream. End of year audits, customer calls for a balance, they have to pull it from two different systems. They try to secure additional capital from capital sources, and they can't get that. What ends up, what seems to be not such a problem because you have 90% coverage becomes a real problem 6 months from now. So what we do believe, and our thesis moving forward is to really find a way to provide that full coverage. And we do that through a platform approach that does have the capabilities that we could deploy quickly, which is the benefit of a software, pre-built software, but it has the flexibility to configure and fill in that other 10%, because no two lenders are the same. That's one big thing I've learned, right? If you think about it, what are lenders selling? They're selling money. But the difference between one and the other is so dramatic because one's both in the terms and in the credit policies and how they handle it. That is the nature of the industry. So to solve for that, you do need that hybrid approach where you continue to make as much as you can repeatable, but you have to be able to do that portion to configure and customize it to their unique use cases.
And growing up, did you ever imagine that you would be a business owner? Was that always in the back of your head, a little dream, or not at all? It more so happened to you?
Yeah, I always wanted to start something and build something on my own. Mm-hmm. I never thought of it as specifically in tech, specifically in finance, but I always definitely had an itch building something and owning a business for sure. And when I saw the industry was ripe for it, and I had the background in lending and tech, it was a no-brainer at that time to start.
If you had a piece of wisdom, I call them the nuggets of wisdom, that you could share with mini Henry, let's say 20-year-old Henry, how would you coach yourself? What would you tell yourself?
Wow. I think the biggest thing I would say is to work on not trying to feed my comfort zone. Very often we're making decisions that are to protect our comfort zone. And those decisions hold us back from possibilities and opportunities that are there for us to take. So to find ways, we all have our comfort zone. But if I was talking to my earlier self and to realize that, because very often it's subconscious, you don't realize it. But if I were to realize that I'm making decisions to protect the comfort zone, and those are trade-offs from faster growth, better growth, and incredible opportunities and possibilities, I think I would have made different decisions and been able to grow much faster, healthier, more profitable, and just even in personal life too. So that to me is a big thing that stands out.
Would you be willing to share an example of exactly that? Like staying in your comfort zone versus,
100%. So first of all, hiring and firing, right? When you have a team member that's not a good fit for the culture, it would take me 6 or 12 months longer than it should to take care of that. Because of the discomfort, because of the trade-offs, that's been a big one, right? The other thing is making decisions that have a high chance of failure, but that you're betting on something that has a huge upside. Whether it's, I think the biggest way to look at that is taking on business that isn't a good fit for you or isn't very profitable, but you just feel like you need to bring in that revenue that month and you're worried to be out of your comfort zone. but that keeps you in that problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are a couple areas that come to mind, and there's many more.
No, absolutely. For the first one, hire slow, fire fast. And for the second one, it touches back to the survival mechanism, right? Taking on the clients, even if it's not a fit, but that can keep you small or in a zone where you don't want to be doing that, but you still take on because it's revenue. I find that a very tricky balance as a founder to know when to say yes and no. And I have the same problem with you with hiring, firing. This is definitely not my comfort zone. I want to be working with people forever if I can. Not always the best to end a relationship if it doesn't work out. And so what's coming up with Fundingo and where can people find you?
Yeah, so Fundingo has an exciting roadmap and direction to be the household name in loan management for non-traditional lending. When you think about small business lending, private real estate lending, that's not handled by banks, and statistics are that around 75% of lending is through banks and credit unions. The other 25% of lending is by non-bank lenders. Fundingo will be the household name for loan management for the non-bank lending. You can find Fundingo on fundingo.com or on LinkedIn. And yeah, if you're a lender or anyone in finance or any CEO out there that wants to chat, I'd love to open that conversation.
Amazing, Henry. It was really a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And that wraps up today's episode on Parlez-Vous CEO in our commercial and prop tech series. I'm Anne-Lise Cailliez, and I can't wait to join you again next week.
Thanks for listening to Parlez-Vous CEO today. If you enjoyed the show, leave a 5-star review. It helps us keep going. And connect with us on Instagram at Parlez-Vous CEO. I am Anne-Lise Cailliez, and I know some days are harder than others. On those tough days, think back to why you started. What you're doing today matters, even when you can't see the results yet. Ideas are great, but it's what you do with them that counts. Find everything we talked about today at parlezvousceo.com. See you next week, and you've got this.